In 1959, 9 experienced hikers walked into the frozen Ural Mountains of Russia. None of them would come back alive. What was found weeks later was so disturbing that the Soviet government sealed the files for decades. And even today, no one can fully explain what happened on that mountain. They were students and graduates from the Ural Polytechnic Institute, young, fit, and full of life. Their leader was 23-year-old Igor Dyatlov, an experienced and respected hiker. For most of the group, this was far from their first expedition into the wild. Their destination was a remote peak called Otorten, deep in the northern Urals. The journey was officially graded Category 3, the highest difficulty rating that existed for a winter trek in the Soviet Union. If they completed it, they would earn their top hiking certification. On January 23rd, they boarded a train and set off toward the wilderness. The photographs they took along the way show a happy, joking group, full of energy, with no idea what was waiting for them. The hikers documented their entire trip on film. The final developed photographs are haunting to look at. They show the team laughing and digging out their tent on the slope in the last hours of daylight that any of them would ever see. Their personal diaries were also recovered. The entries are strikingly ordinary, jokes, daily plans, and complaints about the cold. There is no hint of fear, no warning, nothing that hints at the horror that was only hours away. Early in the trek, one member, Yuri Yudin, began suffering from joint pain and decided to turn back. At the time, it felt like bad luck. In reality, that decision saved his life. He became the last person to ever see his 9 friends alive. The remaining 9 pushed deeper into the mountains. On February 1st, a violent snowstorm swept in. Visibility dropped to almost nothing, and the group drifted off course, climbing the slope of a mountain they had meant to pass around. That mountain had a chilling name in the language of the local Mansi people, translated, roughly, to Dead Mountain. According to some accounts, the indigenous Mansi regarded the region as a place of danger, somewhere outsiders were simply not meant to go. As night fell, the group made a strange decision. Instead of descending into the shelter of the forest just a short distance below, they pitched their tent on the open, exposed mountainside, right in the path of the wind. To this day, no one knows why. The plan was for Dyatlov to send a telegram once they returned, no later than February 12th. That date came and went in silence. At first nobody panicked, delays were common. But as more days passed with no word at all, the families began to demand a search. Finally, on February 20th, a rescue team of students and volunteers set out into the mountains, retracing the group's planned route. 6 days later, on February 26th, they found the tent. It was half collapsed and buried under a layer of fresh snow. But as they got closer, they noticed something that made no sense at all. The tent had been cut open from the inside. The hikers had taken a knife and sliced through the canvas wall to escape, instead of using the entrance just a meter away. Whatever drove them out, they were in too much of a hurry or too much terror to use the door. Before we go further into what the searchers found out there in the snow, if you're finding this story as fascinating as I am, please take a moment to like and subscribe. It genuinely helps the channel grow. Alright, let's head back to the mountain. Outside the tent, a line of footprints led away into the darkness. And here the mystery deepened. Some of the prints were made by bare feet, others by people wearing only socks. They had walked out into temperatures around 30 degrees below zero, with almost no clothing at all. Strangely, the footprints showed no sign of panic or struggle. The group had walked, calmly and in formation, down the slope, heading for the distant tree line nearly a mile away. There, beneath a tall old cedar tree, beside the remains of a small campfire, the searchers found the first 2 bodies. The men were lying in the snow, dressed only in their underwear. The branches of the cedar above them were snapped off as high as 5 meters up. It looked as though someone had clawed their way up the tree in desperation, maybe to start a fire, or maybe to look back at the tent they had fled. 3 more bodies were discovered scattered across the slope, between the tree and the campsite. From the way they lay, it appeared they had died while trying to crawl back up toward the tent, perhaps to reach their clothing. One of these 3 was Igor Dyatlov, the leader. He was found frozen on the slope, lying on his back, one hand still gripping a small birch branch. But 4 members of the group were still missing. They would not be found for over 2 months, until the deep snow finally began to melt in early May. Their bodies were discovered in a ravine, buried beneath 4 meters of snow, in a small stream below the cedar tree. And it was their injuries that turned this tragedy into a true mystery. 2 of them had suffered massive fractures to the chest. Another had a severe skull fracture. Doctors said the force required was comparable to a high-speed car crash. And yet, the skin above these injuries was barely marked. No deep cuts, no major external wounds. Most disturbing of all, one of the women was missing her eyes, her tongue, and part of her lips. The official autopsy struggled to explain how such injuries could ever have occurred. And there were stranger details still. Some of the recovered bodies had skin tinted a deep orange or brown. A few accounts even claimed that some of the hikers' hair had turned gray, and traces of radiation were later detected on parts of their clothing. In the decades since, almost every theory imaginable has been proposed. A sudden avalanche, a wave of infrasound causing blind panic, a secret military weapons test gone wrong, even an attack by a creature of the mountains. The Soviet investigation ended abruptly, with an official cause listed only as an unknown compelling force. Then, in 2021, scientists offered a more grounded explanation, a rare slab avalanche. They argued that a slab of compacted snow could have slid onto the tent in the night, causing the crushing injuries and driving the survivors out into the cold. It is the most scientific theory we have, but even the researchers admit it cannot explain everything. More than 60 years later, we still don't truly know what made 9 experienced, level-headed hikers cut their way out of their tent and walk barefoot into a freezing, pitch-black night, straight to their deaths. Some say it was simply nature, cruel and random. Others believe it was something we still don't understand. And some say that certain mountains are better left alone. Thank you for watching. If you made it this far, subscribe for more.